Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I am known as Queen Bee Creations. And today we're doing a free online class on how to make this fun fold card with a bit of a point. And so I have a few different examples, and we're going to make an even different example just to give it a little more fun, to show you how versatile some of these folds can be. Okay, so here we are on my desk, and this is the card we're making. And I've got a couple different examples here, but this one's done with the seashells, and I've used that Sand and Sea Designer Series paper in the back. And did you ever think about turning this punch on its side and doing the oval vertical instead of horizontal? I hadn't thought of it before, but it just kind of fit that punch, like or the sentiment just right. So I kind of like it. And then this one is done using the prized peony, although I did use the Sand and Sea Designer Series paper. That's one of the things I love about our Designer Series paper, is even though most of them are pretty themed on one side, if you flip it over, they're usually fairly generic on the back. So if you have a paper pack that's, say, Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas or Valentine's Day, and you're thinking, oh goodness, I'm not going to be able to use this for a whole nother year, that's not necessarily true. Take a look at the other side, and usually the other side is fairly generic, and it's just a Stampin' Up! Color with a generic background and can be used on all sorts of things. So we're not going to need much for today's card. All we're going to need is a standard card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I have a piece of Designer Series paper. See, here's my seashells, and there's my generic. And we're going to use this side, and this is 3 3/4 by 5. We're also going to need a piece of basic white that's going to be 3 3/4 by 5. So let me pull that out. And then I'm going to use, like I said, the prized peony. And last time I stamped it, and I thought that came out really pretty, but it also has a fabulous set of coordinating die cuts. And so I thought maybe we would die cut the peony and put that on the front of this as well to make it a little more 3D, and it would give us a chance to play with this once more, because there is a little bit of a trick on putting it together, but once you've seen it a few times, it's fairly easy to do. So we're going to put that off to the side, and let's see. I'm starting out with my little packet. I use these little Pendaflex folders to hold all my scraps, and every time I'm looking to do something, I pull out my Pendaflex of that color first to see if I have a scrap and I don't have one the size I need. Then it's okay to cut into a full piece. But if I just needed something small, like when I do these pieces for my die cut peony, I've got lots of pieces in here that are plenty small enough to cut out those little pieces, and I'm not going to need to cut into a whole nother full sheet of cardstock. But for this one I am. So I'm going to need a piece of basic white, and I need this to be 3 3/4 by 5. And then I'm going to keep this trimmer out, because one of the things we're going to need to do is we're going to need make some little marks on these things. And so I want to mark my card front across the bottom halfway. So since this is 5.5, halfway is going to be 2 3/4. And then I'm going to do the side halfway. So this is 4 1/4. So that's going to be 2 1/8. If 1/8 bother you, you can do the 2-inch flat. It's not going to change anything. It's nice and simple. So I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to put this in here at the 2 3/4, and then I'm going to use my pencil, and I'm just going to make a little mark right here. And then I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to go to the 2 1/8. Again, you can use 2, but if you're looking for 2 1/8, the easy way to find it is these are every 1/4 inch, and 1/8 is half of that. So it's going to be this line right here. Okay, so I just made teeny tiny little tick marks on the sides and in the bottom. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to line those up in my track. So I'm going from this 2 1/8 to the 2 3/4, and I'm using the scoring blade. You have to be really careful with the trimmer that you don't accidentally pull the cutting blade. Believe me, I've done that more than once. Okay, so now I'm going to put it with the corner up at the top, and I'm going to go down to that same point. And so it's really easy to look down through our clear trimmer and make sure that those little things are on point. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I'm putting those two pieces in the track. And that way. And then I'm going to do the side and the bottom. Oops. And I'm going to score that again. So hopefully you guys can see that there's a score line here and a score line here. Then I'm going to take the bone folder and I'm going to burnish those score lines. And we can also take our eraser and just erase those little marks. They're probably not going to be seen, but if it bothers you, go ahead and erase them because we're done with those. So I'm just burnishing all of these score lines really well. And this should be fairly pointy at the end. And if you can see, it's not quite as pointy as I'd like, but I'm not going to freak out. It's really easy to come in with a pair of scissors, especially if I take these long ones, and I just go from that point and go straight up. And there, you'd never know I didn't get it straight. Not a big deal, and it's not necessary, but like I said, I have a lot of you people will tell me that you're a little fussy about those things, and don't let it get to you. Keep on making your card, you know? It's not screwed up. We're not going to need to throw anything away. I hardly ever throw a card away. Once in a great while, I can screw things up pretty bad, and yes, it ends up in the trash. But for the most part, most things can be fixed. That's why I say, you know, always stamp before you adhere. And, you know, if you get a little smudge mark, maybe that's a part where you're going to put an extra popped up embellishment, or, you know, another die cut goes there. There's always something we can do. Trust me, there's always something. So I want this to stay together. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of liquid glue. And I want to make sure that my liquid glue stays in here, but is below that line. So I'm going to put a little mark right here. You can't even see it, you guys, on camera, but I did. I made a little mark. Make it a little bigger. And I want to make sure that all of my glue is this way of that little mark. And I've done quite a few of these now, so I kind of know where that is. But the idea is if you got extra glue out here, there's the chance that later on you'd be gluing it to the inside of your card, and we don't want to do that. I made that noise about not needing my little mark, and there I went. But as I've said before, that's where this adhesive remover comes in. This is something that Stampin' Up! Used to sell. We don't anymore, but the last time I picked some up, they were at the dollar store. So really cheap and easy, and they work fabulous, and they last forever. I think that's why Stampin' Up! Isn't selling them anymore, because everybody bought one in the 90s and they're still using their original. I know I am. Okay, so now we're going to adhere this side. So there's our card base. Isn't that pretty? I mean, we're not even done with it yet, but you're going to love what we do with it next. We're going to take our 2 layers, and I'm going to mark these on the halfway point across the bottom. So I'm going to put this at 2.5. And I'm going to make a little mark. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. Then we're going to put that mark in this corner in the track. And then I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So now, because my paper has a little bit of a pattern to it, I want to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the fact that these lines line up. And so this is how I want to adhere it down onto my card. I want the things to kind of match up. Now on the white, that's not going to make a difference because I'm going to trim off the sides and they're going to be used just as scrap for another project. They'll go into my Pendaflex file. So I don't need that one. And I don't need this other one. But I do want this because this is going to be the inside of the card. And then the pink one's going to be the outside. So I'm just going to take my liquid glue again, and you could use seal if you wanted to. I just wanted a little bit of wiggle room today. Has anybody stamped anything super fun lately? This afternoon I'm really going to do that drawing. I have our top commenters from last month on who was active in the realm of creativity, and I have my prize pack ready to go. So I'll go to the post office this afternoon after I draw that. But make sure that you are actively participating in the realm. And I've tried to get you guys to post pictures. I think your work is beautiful. Some of you have emailed me things but have not had the courage to put it up on the realm. But I'm telling you, it is so worth it. They are gorgeous and everybody's going to love them. So please put them on the realm if you can. If not, just go in there and comment on other people's stuff, comment on my posts. Just give some likes out there. Let's just get talking in there. And then I can give away prizes. I'm like, stuff's starting to pile up. I've been collecting prizes to give you guys and nobody's commenting. So I've got stuff. Okay, so I'm just kind of lining this up. And I closed the card because I want to make sure that wherever I'm ending up with this piece, it's going to line up with my pattern. Now again, yours may not have a pattern and that might not be necessary, but I happen to pick one that did. Okay, now this piece is what's going to go right here in the middle. And so that's where I want to stamp my sentiment. And again, like I said, I hardly ever throw stuff away. So I want to make sure that I stamp this first because if we goof up, I want to be able to flip it over and stamp on the other side. So I'm just going to, this is in here for masking. I've done that on several videos to show you guys. Let's just pick one. Now this has several words on it that have, like they're straight, but the bottom of the stamp is not even with the words. Is that making sense? I want to make sure that I use the bottom of like refreshes as my straight line. And so I'm trying to match that up with the straight lines on my grid paper. And I'm going to take my block and I'm going to set that right over the top. And I'm aligning my side ones and the bottom ones of my block with the grid lines as well. And hopefully that keeps me straight. I'm going to bring in some Blushing Bride. Now I chose Blushing Bride because that's one of the colors in our paper. We've got Blushing Bride, Melon Mambo, and So Saffron. And I know that because they're all listed on the back of the Designer Series paper. Every paper that we have comes color coordinated with our set Stampin' Up! Color families. And that's one of the things that brought me to Stampin' Up! Is our color coordination. If you were to pick Melon Mambo in a marker, a blend, a paper, ink, re-inker, anything, they're all going to be the same shade and they're going to consistently be the same shade. So when you go to buy a refill later on of extra paper or, you know, the ink refill for your pad, there's no worrying about a color lot or changes at the factory or, you know, different brand. They're all going to be Melon Mambo and they're going to stay that way until Stampin' Up! Tells us they've made a change. So we're ready to go ahead and stamp our sentiment. Now again, I'm just using my grid paper as a guide. And I'm stamping that in the center. And I think that looks good enough. So we'll go ahead and adhere that inside. Okay, and there we go. There's our base. Now we're just going to play around with the peony for the front. Like I said, these dies are a little bit on the tricky side, but once you've watched it a few times, it's easy. So I'm going to show you how we do that. Now the peony comes in a series of dies, and they're going to nest one inside of each other. Now these ones here are for the stamps. When I did the other one, you can stamp these and then cut them out with the die cut. That's why these are shaped the way they are, because they're going to cut out all these little flowers. And they're going to match it perfectly. But we're going to build one out of dies. And so I'm going to come in with these. Okay, and these ones are actually for the leaves. So you'll notice there's 2 of the detailed part and then there's 2 of the solid part. And so as you were using the leaves, you would do this as a solid piece, and then this is going to be a detailed piece that's going to lay over the top, and it's really pretty. And there's 2 different sizes of leaves. But I'm going to start with the flower itself, and like I said, we're not going to use these solid ones. I used those last time. And then it's got this beautiful edge that cuts and embosses at the same time. So it's just a wonderful die set to use. Like I said, we're going to be using our scraps here, and so I'm just going to take a look and see, you know, what I can fit onto here for camera purposes and speed of our class. I'm going to go ahead and load these all up on one piece. And then I'm going to do the center part in gray. This is our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. It works with our embossing folders and our die cuts. And all of our plates are numbered, so to do this I needed a 1, 2, 3, and 3. Of course, all the directions are on top of here, so you know exactly how to put it together. And then I tend to keep my cleaner one on top, because sometimes if there's, like, these get pretty gouged in after a while when they've been used, and sometimes if I have them on top, very fine little lines will appear of the little scratch marks in the top of my cardstock, and we don't really want that. But I find if I keep a smoother one on top, there's no worry about that. This one's starting to warp a little bit, which means it's time for me to turn it over. The way to keep these from warping more is each time you use it, rotate it. And then if it's really bad warped and you want to try to flatten them out, what I will do with this one or the Sizzix machine is I set them together, put them upside down, and I'll feed them into the machine and then center it. And this will put the pressure of the rollers down onto that plate and hopefully flatten it back out. So this is the parts of my flower. And to soften them up and give them a little bit of an oomph, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my bone folder, and you can also choose to bring in a sponge dauber. And the sponge dauber is a way to just add a little bit of color. And I've done it both ways. You can either add a little bit of color to just the insides, so the color's growing from the inside out, or you can just tap it on the edges. But again, this gives it a little more depth. And see, this is going to be an edge too, because the flowers are going to feed up inside one another. So I'm just going to give this edge a little bit of a flick as well. This is Blushing Bride ink on Blushing Bride cardstock. And I chose Blushing Bride because it is one of the colors in our designer series paper. Now, the way this is going to line up is there's a little bit of a bump. I don't know if you guys can see that, but these little bumps are going to align together, and that's how we're going to know that it's put together. We can also give it a little bit of a curl. And this is just breaking down the fibers of our cardstock, making it a little softer and giving it a little bit of a curl, which will make it look more flower-like. Now I'm bringing these forward, and because this one's going to slide inside of here, remember? So we want those to curl towards us. Okay, now keeping an eye on this point, I'm going to stick that in between these two layers, and I'm going to push it down And I'm going to make those two things line up. So see how this curve matches exactly? So that's what I'm doing. I'm making sure that these two things are one on top of each other. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of glue. Just a little bit. It's not going to need a lot. Then I'm going to take this one, I'm going to feed it in again. And then I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm finding that little curve and I'm going to line them up to each other and add a little bit of glue. And then the last one has the same thing. So all of our layers of our peony have that same little swoop, and that's how we line them up. So see, isn't that pretty? And then we have this little piece that I'm going to stick in the middle, and I made it just a slightly different color, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of Wink of Stella. Maybe it's just me, but I think everything needs a little bit of sparkle. And you could even sparkle more parts of the flower too. But I did this one on a piece that had our adhesive sheet on it, so that all I have to do is come in and peel this backing off, and I'm going to have a self-adhesive sticker. So this doesn't need any glue at all. I'm just going to be able to stick this right down inside and add it to my flower. Now, I talked about those leaves and how we have the detailed part and then we have the full part. So I'm going to bring in scraps of cardstock. And this is Old Olive. And I'm going to top it off with some Mossy Meadow. These are just my two go-to greens when I'm making leaves. I don't know why, but I love them together. Oh, you know, and I think I want this to have adhesive sheet on it as well. That will make that a lot easier to go together. Now the leaves are different. They're not interchangeable, but it's fairly easy to figure out. When you're looking at them, this one's got kind of a mostly straight side to it, and this one has your wiggle. So you can see how this one is going to line up perfectly on there. Whereas if I had them switched, they're not exactly going to line up. So again, like I said, I used the adhesive sheet so they could be peel and stick. This is a take your pick tool. It's very versatile, does lots of different things. One of the things it does is help me pull the backing off of tear and tape and dimensionals, and a little rubber end over here helps me to put rhinestones, pearls, those kind of embellishments on. Some people have said that it oozes a little too much because it's full of putty on the inside. And the idea is that you wanted to tighten it down so just enough putty comes out, but then like back it off a quarter turn, because it's the pressure of the tool going into the putty that makes it continue to ooze. So if you just back it off a touch, it'll stop doing that. This side has the spatula and the pointy tool, and then it also has an additional piece that goes in here that is a stylus tool, and it's got the fat stylus and the skinny one. The skinny one goes down into the groove on our simply scored tool, and the other one rides on top, so it depends on how deep you want your score line. And there's also a little mini die brush option you can get that will help you get fine die cuts out of your die. So if you don't have one of these, you might want to add that to your wish list. Okay, so I'm just pressing that down on there. So see how that just gives a little bit of extra depth that's going to go underneath the flower that we've already given a little bit of extra depth. Isn't that pretty? And so this is going to mount onto here. And so all we have to do is figure out how we want our leaves to sit, whether we want them both to come out one side or one out either side. We would just decide how we want that mounted and then glue it on. I kind of tend to like them both coming out of one side. What do you guys think? Do you have a preference on how they come out? I'm going to attach them with glue dots. I have a little bit of ribbon around my glue dots. That just keeps them from unraveling on my desk. I found before I did that, it would have a tendency to, I don't know, just start rolling away on me. And as it rolled away, it would unravel and I'd have these glue dots just strewn all over the place. So the ribbon helps keep things in line. I'm not sure where to put them. I could mess with this for 15 minutes and we'd still be sitting here making a card. But that's all there is to that. So we can either attach this with dimensionals or we can put tear and tape, a little bit of Stampin' Seal, however you decide you want to adhere this to your card. And there we go. We have a beautiful card. As I started with, these are the cards I did yesterday. And they're all kind of similar. This is the Sand and Sea, and this is the Prized Peony. They're in our annual catalog. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the back there is an alphabetical index. So if I'm ever talking about some stamp set and you're curious on where to find it, usually I give a link. But you can also check here, page 73 would be our Prized Peony. So that's this one right here. See how pretty this is done with our new colored vellum? That would have been really pretty. Seaside Seashells is the name of that bundle. This is an area in the back of our catalog that lists all of our die bundles. Our stamp sets and our dies are available separate, or you can save 10% by buying them together as a bundle. So if you're intending on buying the stamps and the die cuts or a punch, this is the better way to do it. If you're really interested in like an entire suite, like the Pansy suite is going on right now, and it's gorgeous. You don't actually save money by buying as a whole suite any more than the 10% you're getting on the bundle, but it just makes it easier. You only have to order one item number and you know you have everything you need to make the projects. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. That's why I'm here. I love to help people out and get them into the spirit of stamping. It's the way I find stress relief, and I like to share that with others. I will be here next Monday doing another Facebook Live class, but if you need me in the meantime, pop on over to the Realm, show up on my page, send me an email. I'm always happy to help. So thank you for those that shop with me and watch my classes on Mondays. I appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Bye.